Hey there everyone, Mazrock here, and today I want to have a little state of the game discussion. Is Dragonflight too hard? I have seen opinions from all sides of the table, from people, progressing through Mythic, doing 20s, to people just trying to play casually, and I find myself somewhere in the middle, and through a lot of these discussions that I've had with all sorts of people, I kind of have some thoughts, and I'd like to share them with you guys. So before we get started, please do like, comment, subscribe. It goes such a long way to helping out the channel. You guys have been insanely supportive. Thank you so much for that. There is a Patreon link below. If you see any weak auras or LVY profiles or anything you want, you can get them all in my Patreon, which I have been a lot more active lately, and I look towards being a lot more active this year, since I am trying to do this full time. I am trying to make that swap to get you guys more content, to stream more for you guys. And that's a lot easier when you're not doing this and another actual job. But if you do want those weak auras or LVI profiles for free, you can get them in my Discord as well. You just kind of got to go looking for them, so you got to do a little bit of grunt work, but it's there. But the easiest way to get them is through Patreon. Lastly, I stream on Twitch. And yeah, so is Dragonflight too hard? So Season 1 of Dragonflight has definitely been interesting. So with the Mythic Plus scene, we have 4 old dungeons. We have Court of Stars, Halls of Valor, Temple of the Jade Serpent, and Shadow Moon Burial. And we have 4 Dragonflight dungeons in the seasonal rotation: Algathar's Academy, Naku Defensive, the Azure Vaults, and Ruby Life Pools. Oh yeah, that's the one I want to kind of erase from my mind. And while the 4 Dragonflight dungeons are incredibly fun and well made, I have to say that, like, Algathar's Academy, incredibly fun. Naku Defensive, despite how hard it can be, is a really fun and well made dungeon. I am not a fan of Azure Vaults, that one can go to hell. And Ruby Life Pools is a really well designed dungeon. It is. It's just the Dragonflight dungeons. Every mob has mechanics that you need to deal with, and multiple mechanics. Let's take the Algathar's Academy. The first pull on the left has that Magical Scepter, which has Mystic Blast, which is a required kick in, anything in a 15+, especially at the gear levels that, most of the population has now. If it is not kicked, you are in big trouble. But then it also has a stunnable, like non-kickable, hard CC cast called Arcane Rain, which you can avoid, but just makes life a lot easier if, you don't have to move your feet a bunch, move your feet for frontals, and, and it should be kicked. But then there's everything else where, the elementals have a Surge and Mana Void, and the battle axes have bleeds, and a lot of things that, you just have to deal with, and that's one pack. That's one that's one pull. It's usually a double, but that's one pull. And adding all of these mechanics on into a single pull in every single dungeon, multiplied by every single pull that can be made in the dungeon, I feel has really widened the skill gap among World of Warcraft players. And the skill gap is something that I have actually been talking about for quite a bit of time. And I've been trying to relay this through my videos and things like that. And since Mythic Plus has come in, I'll give you the little TLDR, since Mythic Plus has come in Legion, the WoW skill gap between a casual player and a top-end player has been widening and widening and widening so much that it's actually insanely crazy, where the top players in the world aren't even playing the same game as 95% of the player base anymore. It's just not. It has the same title, but it's not the same game at all. And I'm not saying this is a good or a bad thing. Please understand, I'm not trying to say that, this is necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's something that we obviously need to acknowledge as a community and a player base, is that this game is getting more difficult. The skill gap is widening a little bit as well, because if you look at this, like the Mythic Plus seasonal dungeons right now, the 4 not Dragonflight dungeons are infinitely easier than the 4 Dragonflight dungeons at a higher level of play. Once you start getting into 15+, Halls of Valor is easier than, some Ruby life pools. It's not that that's an opinion, that's just kind of a fact. The timer's tight, but it is a lot easier. Shadow Moon Burial and Court of Stars are the two easiest dungeons this season, and if you have a 17 Azure Vaults or Ruby life pools as a more casual-based player, versus having a 17 Shadow Moon Burial or a 17 Court of Stars, I don't need to tell you which ones you're going to time, and which ones you are hard figuring is probably going to be a deplete. And that's harsh. That's really, really harsh. And that affects the casual base a lot more negatively in the long run. And I personally think that Dragonflight dungeons, as well designed as they are and as fun as they are, have too many mechanics. I tried to make a not good offensive guide, and it was like an hour long. And I was like, nobody's gonna watch this. And maybe I should do it. If that's something you want to watch, let me know. But like, the amount of things that you need to kick and CC and work around and play around and pull around in that dungeon is out of this world insane. And because there's actually 4 separate zones in Knockwood, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, they're not even the same type of things that you need to deal with. Once you deal with Granith and that area there with all of the centaurs there, you go over to Raging Tempest, and it is a whole whack of new issues and new mechanics that you have to deal with. And then you go over to the Necromancer territory, Teru and Makruk, something like that. Yeah, the two boss centaurs. I'm pretty terrible at names, especially in the morning. But that makes life a lot more difficult for the casual player to have to learn a lot of these mechanics. And while mechanics are fun in dungeons, because I think that just going in and wailing for big DPS and massively pulling all of the mobs can be fun, it does get old quick. And I think there are mechanics that you need to work around and pull around to not have too many of them, to not have too many CCs. And there needs to be a balance there, but I think Dragonflight takes it a little bit too far. And that is kind of not fun, right? That's not fun when it takes it a little bit too far, because the average player is going to have a lot harder of a time doing this. And that's not fun for anybody. Because sometimes, like I said, it is fun to just massively pull a pack and massively pull double, triple, quadruple pull and just go to town and just wreck all the face, right? That's fun. And you want to do that from time to time. One of my favorite pulls in Shadowlands was in Necrotic Wake. That first pull where you just like pulled everything in that first area, and the only thing you really had to worry about was the big guy as a tank, because he did kind of truck a little bit, but then kicking drain fluids. Like, that was really your only big major CC that you had to worry about. Kick drain fluids. That pull was always fun. But then as you got into the dungeon a lot more, there were some big pulls which were made easier by the weapons and things like that, of course, but not every single little mob in those big pulls had something that you needed to worry about and worry to CC and worry to kick and make it almost impossible to double, triple, quadruple pull. And that kind of sucks. You know what I mean? It kind of sucks that that's lost. And a lot of the old dungeons are really fun. But that's kind of where I am with Mythic Plus. I actually think that there's too many mechanics in the Dragonflight dungeons. There's just too many. And there needs to be a balance between the two, because I obviously don't want no mechanics. Mechanics are fun. Using your kicks, using your CCs, using what you have in your toolkit to make life easier and to have a great run feels really good. But there comes a time where it's just too much. Let's move over to the raid. So one of the things with the raid, and I think this is a very common problem with the kind of average player base, is a lot of people right now are 7 out of 8 heroic. Because Razageth heroic is its own monster. We are currently 2 out of 8 mythic with our guild. I did end up pugging with like a 50% guild group that could make it on like a Sunday. We did get our AOTC. We got heroic, but we did have to kind of pug a good chunk of players and kick some that weren't performing well, and we did get it. But Raszageth Heroic is its own beast, and as we are currently progressing through Mythic, I'm only 2 out of 8 Mythic. Like, we're not super far in. But the first 2 bosses in Mythic right now have been stupid easy in comparison to Heroic Raszageth. And as we continue progressing, I'm going to make an assumption here to assume, and I could be wrong, I could be right on this, but a lot of I think the next 3 or 4 bosses are actually going to be easier on Mythic than Heroic Raszageth is. And that's... I don't know if that's healthy for the state of the game. I think Raszageth is an incredibly fun fight. It's super well designed. The room looks amazing, by the way. And having tanked it through and through in Heroic, I actually had to kind of tinker tune my talents to be able to be like, okay, I need this, I need this, I need the stun for the spark ads, I need Wrecking Throw for the Storm Surge, I need to have these defenses for these times. And for me, that's incredibly fun. But while Heroic raids have been more attainable for the average player base, we ran in an hour and 15 minutes 7 out of 8 Heroic last night. Like, it cranked one shot everything. Then you get to Heroic Raszageth, and the difficulty jump there is stupid. It's actually pretty crazy how high that jump is. And is that healthy for the game? I'm gonna go ahead and assume no. Do I think the heroic boss at the, your AOTC kill should be more difficult than the rest of the raid? 0 questions. 0 questions. Yes, I think it should. I think it should be a challenging fight. But that's where we get to the meat of this, is what level of challenging are you trying to make this? And challenging for who? Right? Is it challenging for the casual or average player base? Is it Is it more challenging for the mythic raiders? What are you trying to attain? Because, like I said, I honestly think that our next few mythic bosses are going to take less pulls as an entire guild group to get them down than Heroic Raszageth. At what level do you want Heroic Raszageth to be a certain level of difficulty as a mythic boss? Because right now, going through the raid and seeing the raid, I think Heroic Raszageth is going to be harder than more than 50% of the raid on Mythic. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's good. I think the raid needs to be balanced a little bit better. I also think that 7 out of the 8 heroic bosses actually should have been a little bit more difficult. That's my own personal opinion. There definitely are some easy crank bosses on there that should have more difficult mechanics or whatever have you not, because we're not super geared yet and we are just destroying it. But I digress. That is kind of my own personal opinion, but that also leads to this, is everyone has their own opinion, everyone has their own perceptions of things, and what level of balance is Blizzard looking to attain between all of these opinions? And that is not an easy thing to accomplish, and I commend Blizzard for even trying. That is an insanely difficult thing to try and attain and achieve, and to find a balance between the person who logs in a couple hours a week versus the person who lives on this game 12 hours a day, right? And everyone in between, and that's not an easy thing to do. But I think Dragonflight has definitely shown some flaws in the system, has definitely shown some flaws in the widening skill gap that's occurring here with Dragonflight, and it's not a lot of our favorite game, World of Warcraft. That's what I have for you today. What do you guys think down below? Thank you very much for listening, everybody, and happy tanking.